Welcome to Dial It In, a podcast where we talk with fascinating people about marketing, sales, process improvements, and tricks that they use to grow their businesses. Join me, Dave Meyer, and Trygve Olsen of BusyWeb as we bring you interviews on how the best in their fields are dialing it in for their organizations. Let's ring up another episode. Welcome to our summer recap from Season 3 of Dial It In. We're recapping each week our favorite episodes and tips and tricks that stood out for our team. Today, I'd like to highlight Katie Walter. Katie's insights on the world of fractional executives was incredibly relevant and helpful. It's a new paradigm in how people... let me redo that one. It's a new paragraph. Stop. Plus. Oh, we kicked her out. All right, cool. Is that going to hurt us? Okay. Katie Walter. Welcome to the summer recap from Season 3 of Dial It In. We're recapping our favorite episodes and the tips and tricks that stood out for our team. Katie's insights on the world of fractional executives was incredibly relevant and helpful. It's a new paradigm of how people work, and since fractionals are increasingly great connections for our business, it was super enlightening and a great intro into the world of fractional leadership and a great promo for her fractional conference and how to do business with executives that are in their next phase of business. Enjoy the show. One of the things that we do a lot in the Dial It In podcast and in our community is engage with fractional executives. And I am incredibly excited today to have Katie with us, Katie Walter of the Fractional Conference, and she has her own fractional business. And I think best to just say hello, Katie, and welcome.
Hi.
Katie Walter is a strategic business leader, fractional CMO, and a driving force behind the Fractional Conference, an event dedicated to the rapidly evolving world of fractional work. With a background in business growth, leadership, and connecting companies with a high impact talent, Katie helps organizations navigate the changing landscape of work. She brings deep insights into why businesses are increasingly turning to fractional executives and how professionals can successfully build careers using this model. Whether scaling a startup or optimizing an established business, Katie's expertise in talent strategy, leadership, and adaptability provides valuable takeaways for both business leaders and fractional professionals alike. Ooh, there. Perfect. Katie, welcome. How are you?
I'm good. How are you today?
Good. And as of recording, I think we're recording in March here. T-minus how long until the next fractional conference?
7 months and
Oh, wow.
10 days.
Yeah, it's coming up fast. And I believe it's
Yeah,
October.
5
right?
months just went like that.
I know. So amazing. I do. My producer isn't reminding me that I do have a advertisement. And the ad today, our sponsor, is actually very dialed into the theme of our chat today. As a fractional CMO, your number one goal is to deliver success to each of your clients. With limited time and resources, you need marketing solutions that are data-proven, easy to execute, and repeatable. BusyWeb understands the unique challenges marketing executives face. That's why we offer customized solutions for our fractional CMO partners. You tell us the results you need, and we create the strategy and MarTech stack to get you there. You have a concrete plan, your clients have measurable results, and you look like a rock star. We helped you get there. Everyone wins. Visit fractionaltactical.com to find your tactical marketing partner today. You do the strategy, we get busy. How's that?
On point.
Hand in glove. Yeah. So thank you so much, Katie. And I'm so delighted to have you here. I think the first time we actually did meet in person was at the last fractional conference. So how's life going as a fractional? And I'd love to explore how you wound up here and what you're up to.
Yeah. Life as a fractional is always exciting and one day at a time kind of thing. I've been working as a fractional chief marketing officer since the summer of 2019. I guess I'm a veteran in the field.
As the kids did before it was cool, right?
Before it was cool. I was working from home before it was cool. Although I worked in a global company before I started working on my own. And so like video meetings were just normal. Yeah. Neither one of the women who reported to me were in Minnesota. So we did all of our one-on-ones. I'd be in my office at my standing desk. in Eagan and Minnesota, and they'd be in DC and Toledo, and work got done just fine.
Yeah.
So that was an easy transition for me from corporate to home, because I was used to it. But I had been in corporate for about 16 years, 18 if you count the little companies I worked for before that, and was laid off at the end of 2018, and was feeling right. Everyone said, let me know when you land. Let me know. And my thought was, I don't want to land. I want to be for a while and try a lot of different things, because 16 years with one company is a really long time. I learned so much, and I'm super grateful for the experience that I had there. But I was also burned out, and my anxiety, I didn't even know how. I was so anxious, I couldn't even perceive my anxiety.
Oh, man. Yeah.
When I left, I was just like, I'm fine. And then it took me a really long time to decompress from that phase of my life. And what I realized as I was decompressing was I really wanted to try self-employment. I wanted to see what it would look like to work for myself and more. I was thinking freelance, part-time kinds of things. I didn't have a language for solopreneurship and fractional at the time. My kids were 7 and 10 at the time, and I was looking at them going into middle school and interacting and engaging with me on a very different level. And I didn't want to be away or distracted to the extent that I had been. And so those are all things that just made me say, I need variety. I need to work less. I need to be less consumed by my work. Let's see what self-employment would look like. And I did a bunch of experiments, projects, taking what I could get for several months. And then at some point, the stars aligned and I learned about fractional. I learned about it via an opportunity that someone had on their pipeline to work in legal technology, which is where I had spent my entire career. So this just perfect confluence of opportunity, supply and demand came together, and I learned about fractional. And what I love about it is that it is embedded in an organization. It has you've got a really wide scope or remit. You're not just there to do a campaign or choose a piece of content or do a strategy and then walk away. Everything you do as a fractional is with the intention that it's integrated into the business, that if you leave, your work stays, your work keeps going. You have different people doing it versus it being a flavor of the month kind of initiative or project, which sometimes consulting and campaigns could feel very not core.
Well, it really is a different model and mindset than just like being part-time employed or freelancing at an organization. Right. So can you, and especially being the organizer and CEO of the Fractional Conference, you're one of the luminaries and one of the folks that are really setting, here's what fractional means. So can you tell us if you mention it in conversation in a cocktail party or whatever, what's the elevator pitch of why go fractional, or what is the difference between being a smart executive that just wants to try a few things and then being an official fractional executive?
Yeah, I think of fractional more as a service line that I offer versus an identity or sort of archetype that I fit in. So like I offer fractional CMO services versus saying I'm a fractional CMO and that's all I go to market as. Most of the people who work as fractional leaders do a mix of long-term retainer fractional engagement and project work. And that might be by choice because they like having a little variety, or it could be because they're still building their business and their practice. And so they're taking work that looks interesting and that pays their bills. I don't, in terms of the person or the type of consultant you are, like, as long as you could put a retainer together and offer fractional services, I am happy for you to call yourself fractional. Mm-hmm. But then let's talk about what fractional leadership is, because I think those services are distinct from consulting engagements or interim and part-time engagements. We define fractional leadership as a permanent role on the leadership table, or the org chart, the permanent role that's delivered on a part-time basis. And so a lot of times it's C-suite, but it doesn't have to be C-suite. Directors, I've seen fractional managers, you need to have responsibility within the organization, some sort of leadership role. And it has to be something that's not one-off, like an interim project. So when I come in as a fractional CMO, I'm generally there as a 20 to 30% full-time employee, and I'll be there for 6 months to 2 years. And when I leave, the work that I established keeps going. It's just delivered by someone else. Either they hire full-time for the leadership seat, or someone in the leadership team is equipped and able to serve as that executive sponsor of my work, but they've got the people under them to do the delivery.
Got it. So would you say it's more, and I'm sure that this is different for all purposes, but is it often more interim, like kickstarting? Do you view fractionals, or certainly the work that you've done in the past, as being like training wheels to help a company over a certain hump? And then,
well, I think training wheels is a really good, it's not interim. Interim tends to be more like full-time, and there was already someone in the seat, they vacated it and filling the seat until a full-time permanent replacement can be identified. Usually fractionals are coming in as the first hire at that level in that functional area. And you're establishing the strategic nature of the function rather than filling a seat that already exists. When I've come in as the first marketing hire. I've come in as the first marketing leadership hire. And what tends to be happening is that the CEO or a COO is interfacing with an agency to manage a website or implement HubSpot or some other element of a tech stack or an SEO strategy because someone told them they needed that. The agency didn't tell them they didn't, which happens. I know you don't do it, but there are agencies that will sell you an SEO package whether you need it or not. And so they'll have all these different parts and pieces of a marketing program that aren't tied together and that aren't laddered to a strategic look at how their market likes to buy. Or they might have an administrative assistant who coordinates the trade show, booth presence, and then maybe a social media manager or an agency. And so they put money into marketing, but they don't know if it's working and they don't know if it is actually making a difference for them. And bringing in a fractional CMO is a really nice training wheels approach to getting strategic marketing at the leadership level, to think about it with the same care and concern that you think about how your finance works or how your operations work or how your sales team functions, and to elevate it to that level of rigor. And then from there, build a team or a set of agency resources that can execute. And when you start to see results on that, you can work with your fractional CMO in this case, but we can talk about it in all functional areas of what is the long term? What does it look like to take the training wheels off? Maybe it looks like keeping the fractional CMO on that limited basis forever. That's sometimes the case. And sometimes it means you've grown so far that there's enough work for a full-time strategic leader to do.
Sure.
I love the training wheels analogy, by the way. Did you just cover that, or have you been using it?
I'd love to say that I've known it all the time, but I literally just thought of that as
okay, cool.
But seems to make sense.
Perfect. And I think there's so many parts of an organization that they get by without a strategic leader for a long time. They've got a good controller and they don't need a strategic CFO. They've got a good chief administrative officer and they don't need strategic HR. And they grow without a formal process, or professional sort of lens on the function. And then you get to a point where you're like, actually, we could grow even better or even faster if we filled this seat with someone who is an expert in this particular area. Or you might have really good director of operation and that needs to be full time, but you could have a fractional COO just to make sure that the business goals are reflected in everything the team does.
It's the difference between a consultant, which comes in on a project base, and then fractional is really designed to be embedded and to get far deeper and connected with the company and the culture on an ongoing basis. And until maybe it's time to transition into a different way of being perfect. So CMOs are one of the most popular fractional realms. but I know that there's a ton of others. Are there perfect fits or good options if a company is struggling with, let's just say, growth at this point, right? Or they're struggling with some big thing and they know that they need someone or something. Are there good, like natural fits for fractional roles that people might not initially think of?
You mean for roles? The
Yeah,
types
yeah.
of
And I guess any CX role would be a good spot. So financial officers, operating officers, hiring HR.
Yeah. On the business and how maybe a big services businesses needs a full-time HR executive,
Sure.
something that's not as people heavy wouldn't. I think where it's interesting, the roles that have emerged as fractional behind the C-suite, that there's mutual friend Liz Olsen is a chief community catalyst, she works with businesses that know that engaging some population on a really meaningful level, whether it's a set of a third party sales channel or a customer audience, like creating community within them is part of the strategy to build brand affinity or build sales activity. Like I never would have thought of that as a fractional leadership role, but it is because you need someone who can look at your business and say, how can this channel be optimized and amplified and leveraged to help you achieve your goal even better? How do we design a program and then find the right person to manage it? There's a layer between the idea and the execution, and that's where a non-traditional point solution of a fractional, right? Like someone like Liz can come in and say, I see what the business is trying to do. Here's how we manage it, and here's how we make it happen. So I think there are probably examples like that throughout a business where they need someone who will come in and care deeply about the organization to design and strategize the program, but they don't need to pay that person to manage it.
Sure. Yeah.
You don't want to pay someone $300 an hour to run your community, but you do want to pay them that much to design it and to the metrics and to make sure that it can deliver what it's supposed to deliver. And that's the same with marketing. You don't want to pay me my hourly rate to write your social media posts, but you do want me sitting there to make sure that those social media posts ladder to a strategy, that they're effective, and that we're pivoting if they don't work.
I love that. And I love I think the distinction between a fractional who might do a lot more tactical work and someone who is at the true consultative strategic level is that level of care.
Mm-hmm.
So you can only do that by embedding in an organization to some extent. And you can only really affect change by having real experience to bring to the table.
Right.
So let's flip the conversation a little bit then and get into if someone is looking to become a fractional or they've heard about this, and it's hard to, certainly this is my frame of reference and my circle of influence right now because we love fractionals. If you find yourself as a experienced executive, how do you get into being a fractional?
Whoa, good question. I kind of want to say you just put on your LinkedIn that you're open to fractional work and then you start talking to people. And there's more to it than that, but that's kind of it. Like, I am open to fractional is a great way to start.
Mm-hmm.
And whether you actually put that on LinkedIn or you just start reaching out to your network is just having conversation, and you'll find your way into it. There are certainly structured programs, like when you want to learn the nuts and bolts of starting a fractional practice. John Ars, my partner in the conference, had Voyager University. There are lots of consultants who will help you, or there's programs like get your CTO business started in 6 weeks for X number of dollars. So there are accelerators and there are classes that you can take, but I think conversation is always the first step. Talking to people who are working in this way, finding out the realities of the work, getting a sense for what it takes to get past some of the hangups of being a fractional, and talking to your partner, if you have one, about your financial risk tolerance and what feast or famine really feels and how you're going to support each other through really busy work times and slow times too. What is that going to look and feel like? Our first step was talking to our financial planner. And I was 40 when I stopped working full time. So I have a lot of time left to work at that point. And our kids were very settled in their school communities and in our neighborhood. And so the conversation we had with our financial planner was, first off, it was like, how much do I need to make? And then he said, what do you want in your life? What do you want that to look like? And I said, I want to stay in this house and I want to retire on time. So what do I need to do? What do I need to bring in every year, every month in order to keep paying our bills and to put what's the bare minimum I need to put in my SEP IRA every year so that we can retire when we committed to each other that we were going to retire. And so we set those numbers, and that stability or that sort of baseline of what success looks like is probably the thing that sustains me when things are slow. And not like, how much did I grow last year? That feels good. It feels good. The year I had 40% growth, that was amazing. I won't have that this year, but I'm going to pay my bills and I'm going to properly fund my SEP. So it doesn't matter.
Sure.
But I guess the answer to your question was, what do you need to do? And there's lots of practical steps you can take around the nuts and bolts of setting up a fractional or solopreneur business. I think it's also really important to contemplate the financial and emotional experience that you're going to have within your partnership or within your own solo life.
And you just published a brilliant Substack article on that. That was very transparent and vulnerable, and that was really cool. So we'll include that in the show notes because I think that's important for people to get that experience.
Yeah, we're in a famine. My business is in a famine period right now, and it doesn't feel great, but it's also a good opportunity to reflect on, what do I want from my career?
For sure. So on that, I think different kinds of fractionals are probably better or more suited to different parts of the business development process. And one of the things that I often hear when I'm just commiserating with my fractional friends is, there's always something that comes at you and that's surprising. For a fractional CFO or financial officer, they're probably not really wired to self-promote that much. For a fractional marketing officer, it might be the opposite. The managing the business part might be tricky. How do you guide, or I know that there were breakout sessions at the Frac conference last year where people could round out their knowledge, but how would you guide someone that, is it by just what they're built for on what they need to round out? Or is there a checklist that every fractional really needs to keep in mind?
The first thought that comes to me when you say that is the book. I think it's a book called Who Not How.
Yes.
Yeah. And so if you have gaps in your skill set or your capabilities, consider hiring help to fill those gaps. It might mean hiring a coach to get over whatever mindset issue is keeping you from thinking you can sell. I promise you can sell. I promise. But you have to want it bad enough to get over the hang-ups that you have about it. And that's what I've sometimes told people is, if you're going to tell me that you just can't do it because you can't picture yourself selling, then you don't want it bad enough. And whatever pain you're experiencing in your corporate life has to be worse than the pain of getting over your fear of selling to move through it. And that's the same with whatever other piece of hang up you have. Oh, I could never manage a business, or I could never do X, or you can either stay stuck because what you've got is not that bad, or you could hire someone to help you with those things, or you could learn how to do it. And you always have choices. I think though that if you're not wired for handling the ups and downs and uncertainty, then all of that is going to make you miserable.
For sure. Oh my, yeah. And of course, the obvious answer is you should go to the Fractional Conference to help round out all of the different things that you need to know. But yeah, I think for sales, if you struggle with sales, you just need to reframe what sales is. Everybody
Yeah.
sells everything all the time, right? You need to
Yeah.
be okay with raising your hand and saying, I can help and here's how.
And you're right. It's 100% like, I think being thoughtful about what problems you want to solve and then being able to listen for those problems and then offer to help. And people expect to pay you. Like, it's really super safe to talk about money and to go into sales meetings expecting them to pay you. I know it sounds weird. I know it sounds weird, but when you work in a corporation for your whole career, you don't get paid. You get in trouble if you're like, hey, that's outside of my job description. You get in trouble if you say, can I get a bonus for doing that huge, massive project? Like that, then you're not a team player. You need to look at opportunity as your reward, not actual compensation. There's a whole money mindset culture in a corporation when everyone's just getting paid a salary that you do have to let go of. And when you're a service provider selling a service, they expect you to ask for money.
And there's probably a few tricks on breaking that down for would-be fractionals, I would imagine. And of course, set me straight if I'm wrong, but one of the ways that you could probably do that is look at what the LinkedIn posts or the employment data is showing. Okay, for a full-time CMO in this industry, what do they, so let's just say that they normally run about 200,000, right?
Right.
If I'm going to be a fractional, I'm going to pull back. I'm going to do a third of my time there. So it should be a third of that. Is the math that easy?
I would probably, it's something like that. Yeah, I would add, because the company's not paying, your $200,000 is a total target compensation. So you need to include that in the calculation. It's really, let's say it's really 275,000 when you include bonus and insurance. And I would probably use that total target comp number rather than the flat salary. But that is certainly a way to justify or explain the fraction and how that relates to the amount. It's less money than paying for full time, but it's not cheap.
And you wouldn't warn a client that wants cheap.
Right. It's also a lower risk investment for them. And so they might pay more monthly, but they can get out of it in 30 or 60 days without golden handcuffs payoff. It's less risk in terms of, they're just not committing to that resource or that person sort of relationship that they would be with a full-time person. And I think the nice thing too about using fractional and for your first strategic leadership hire in that area is that there are so many different types of CMOs or CHROs or CFOs who care about X, Y, or Z. And if you've never had someone sitting at that level in that area, you don't really know what to look for in a CMO. So there are people who are really great with brand, and there are people who are really great with growth marketing, and there are people who are really great with the alignment between sales and marketing, or operators, or heavy marketing ops, sales enablement. All of those people rise up to a CMO level. And yes, they should all be able to look across the business and be a strategic business advisor, not just a silo leader. But there is also just different flavors of CMO that count because of that expertise. And so if you can just get used to having someone sitting at the leadership table with that marketing mindset, over time, you might say, the next leader needs to be X, or needs to be really care deeply about Y. And you can make a much safer full-time hire when you've had that fractional expertise sitting there for a while.
For sure. And it's especially as we're setting what the guidelines are for committing an engagement, there are probably a few things that you've seen your just other folks in the community run down that they probably shouldn't have. Like, I would imagine one of the things that you probably shouldn't focus on is an hourly rate.
Yeah.
and just say, we can do hourly. And I'm going to guess, and I've heard of a few folks that have been offered this and wisely turned it down, but coming in for a fraction or a part of equity or something, which doesn't really pay the bills. So are there gotchas like that to be careful of?
Yeah. So full transparency, for the first 4 years I was a fractional, I charged by the hour. Lots of people start that way.
Sure.
Now I charge a monthly retainer based on roughly a percentage of an FTE. There's still a time-based component to it, but that protects me and the client from, it just puts some parameters around me, but it's not turning in a timesheet billing, variables billing, which is not good for anybody either. And that's calculated just exactly the way you described it. What would it cost to hire a full-time CMO for a business of that size in that market? So the total cost of ownership and then fractioning it out. So that's my pricing strategy now. I was recently offered equity in a business and said, because I liked the founder, I said, I'll meet with you a couple of times a month so that we're continuing to work together, but I won't have any deliverables and I won't have X, Y, or Z. And then if you want to take it up from there, there's a price for it. So you don't have to say no to equity right away, but you have to have very clear boundaries. And I don't want to be on the hook for anything if I'm not getting paid every month.
That's really tricky.
And then hourly, like I said, hourly definitely gets a bad rap. I don't think it's ideal, but I wouldn't judge you if you're doing hourly. But I think one of the issues with hourly is that you don't have, it's not predictable for you or the client. So that's just a practical issue. It also signals to them that you are not on the team in the same way. Like, because all the other leaders are salaried. You want to show up like a salaried employee too, even though there's boundaries on what you do. And I feel like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth there because you're not full-time, but you want to behave like a full-time employee.
Right.
And that comes down to setting a really good plan. Like the first 3 months of my engagements are generally planning and quick wins. But that's easy to scope that. And then after that, I think it's a set deliverable package for the most part. And then beyond that, it's where we were working the plan. And I only commit to things that I can deliver within the scope that we've already agreed to.
Sure.
So it's an ongoing conversation. If they want me to do more than that, then we talk about raising the scope.
So you can, and that's something that you should probably have a lever for.
Right.
Is, okay, this is my general level of commitment, but if there's a special project or if something comes up or if it's clear, I'm going to really need to be, instead of a fifth time or of my time, I'm going to need to go half time or maybe even 3/4 time for that. We're going to need to recompensate. Okay.
Yeah. And I think that there's another psychological aspect to hourly and there's a power dynamic that you set up with the client when you're an hourly worker, that there's something about turning in a time card that, again, doesn't feel executive. But we had panel at the first frac where we had pairs of business owners and their fractional leader talk about the relationship that they had and what makes a good relationship between the leader and the fractional. And everyone on that panel said it should be a peer-like relationship. It shouldn't be buyer to client or client to vendor. You should show up like you're part of the team. You should talk to me like we're equals. We should be colleagues. This should feel like a peer relationship. And in my experience with some owners who have wanted to see my hours, that has felt like a power play. I didn't feel like a peer. I didn't feel like a trusted colleague. And so
we're checking your work. So did you ever, you said you would? Yeah.
Right. And
or
that was what the voices in my head would say. And I think getting out of the hourly just sets you up psychologically to show up as a peer. There is not weird power dynamics. And if someone's insisting on seeing a time card, that's a red flag to say, what are the other cultural issues that might be going on here that might not make this a great working environment for me?
I love where this conversation is going. Let's talk more about common red flags. because I think it's important to know when you might need to either realign or maybe even start looking at an exit from a relationship, or maybe not say yes to a relationship that's just getting started. So
Yeah.
what are the big red flags or the things to be careful of?
So we talked about our insisting on an arrangement. I had one that I walked away from in the proposal stage because he said, my CFO is going to insist that you provide me with a guarantee on how many leads your programming will deliver.
Oh, sure.
In the first, right? And that's part of the planning. And then figuring out what lead volume you need is part of the strategic planning. So I can't guarantee you that.
Right.
And if that's what you need, you probably want to talk to someone who is focused on
improvement center or something, right?
lead. Yeah, there are lots of agencies and SDR and BDR outsourcing that will promise you leads. Again, they'll sell it to you whether it's the right thing for you or not. And a fractional CMO can help you assess whether that's the right thing for you or not. And I never heard from him again, which was probably the right thing. I can't promise something that I won't deliver and that I don't know is the right thing for their business.
Right.
I think another red flag, for me, a red flag is when people in my network who I've worked with in other capacities will reach out and they're like, I need someone to help me with the emails for this program. I have the list figured out. I have this figured out. I have that figured out. I'm like, that's just not work that I necessarily want to do. And it's not, I want to figure out if you need the email before we talk about writing the email.
Right.
So those are a few things where I have said, I don't think this is the right opportunity for me.
Right.
There's sort of a point. I think there's also that point of when is the engagement reaching its natural conclusion is an interesting question. And when are they ready to this into business as usual versus having the outside resource? And for me, it's often when it feels like I'm doing I'm leading the work, but it's the same work every month or every quarter. Like we've gotten to a place where it's rinse and repeat. The strategy is working. Now I can hand it to someone else who can run it. And that business might need to innovate in how they do the work 2 or 3 years down the road. And then either they've got the talent in place to do that, or they'll come back to me. But there is a point where, yes, we've gotten this perfected and the team can just run with it. Or if there's a change in strategy where we were going after enterprise sales and the business now on e-commerce downloads of the software, that might not be my sweet spot. And maybe we need to find the right person to do that. So I'm staying open to where the business is going and where my interests are. When I said I worked at the same company for 16 years, but I changed roles every 2 years or more. I like variety. I think for the first 14 years I was there, I did not have the same person do my performance review 2 years in a row because the manager changed jobs or I changed jobs. It was constant change.
That all leads us to the big reason why we're chatting.
Let's talk about the conference.
Let's talk about the conference because I don't think I've ever been in a room where there was more energy, more just everybody was rooting for each other. And it's a community and it really is a movement. So tell us a little bit about the Fractional Conference. And again, it's at fractionalconference.com, correct?
It is. Yep. That is the URL.
Yeah.
So we're planning for our 3rd annual Fractional Conference in Minneapolis, October 27th through 29th. We're aiming for about 350 people in the room. This was an experiment that worked. Our mutual friend, John Arms and Rob Smith, sat down at lunch one day and said, there should be a conference for fractionals and we should create it. And I think, Dave, you were on the initial planning group as well.
I was, yeah.
And
then we were out of the country during the dang conference.
I know, I remember it was so bad. So a bunch of people saw a need and filled it, which is great, right? And it was the experiment of, can we get a room full of fractionals together? We got 192 people in the room or in the building, 2 sets of breakout tracks, main stage production, beautiful, just a beautiful production, but then also a beautiful community of people. I have never, like you said, just been in a room full of people who are so happy to be there. and cheering for each other and wanting the best for each other. And I did a lot of corporate events in my career and sales meetings and leadership meetings. And I've been in rooms full of 200 people who weren't happy to be there. And this feels really different when people are saying, I want to be here and I want to grow and I want to invest in myself. One of our attendees said she left that first meeting and texted her husband to say, I found my people. Yep. And so that's the power of it. There is lots of really good educational content. Some people say there's even too much good educational content and we're just like dumping content on people. So we're trying to get that right. But there's super duper a lot of value you get out of tangible educational content, especially I think for brand new fractionals, there's a lot to learn. And then as you've been more experienced as a fractional or a solopreneur, sort of more generally EOS implementer, business coaches and consultants get a lot of value out of the conference too. It's more integrating and sharing what you know and what you've learned, connecting with people. We're all in a referral business, whether we're fractionals, agencies, solopreneurs of other stripes. And so if we're all selling to small and mid-sized businesses, it makes a lot of sense for us to have a place to get to know each other so that we all have a full quiver of referral partners looking out for us and that we can give to our clients as well.
I love it. And one of the things that I thought was surprising as I was wandering the halls last time in 2024 is it wasn't just fractionals either. It was also organizations that either had fractionals and were trying to support them or were fractional curious, thinking about expanding into the space.
Yeah. And there are a lot of businesses that place fractional engagements. And so if you're listening to this and you're thinking, I would love to work as a fractional, but I don't want to have to run a whole business. There are groups like in the Twin Cities, Lakeside HR places, fractional HR leaders, Authentic places, fractional CMOs. There are people like Chris Taylor or Chris Ortega who are at our conference who have CFOs that they sell on behalf of. And so there's a middle ground there that you can either be a 1099 or an employee, but working in that part-time basis.
Wow. And I know that the conference itself has not just educational opportunities, but there's also, of course, a lot of networking. But then this year, there were also hives that you could break out in, like study groups together almost, where you would build the community. And I'm part of a hive and I'm still meeting with my hive group. So you really are building and fostering an ongoing community.
Yeah. And that is, I mentioned Liz Otteson earlier in this session. That's her brilliance and genius to say, let's create space for people to have a small group to connect with during the conference 2 or 3 times and process what they're learning and what they're hearing and what their action steps are. And then make it really easy for them to keep meeting throughout the year.
Cool. That's amazing. So as we go through, Katie, one of the things that we always do on the podcast is we try to make it easy for our guests to nakedly self-promote. So how do we find you? How do we connect? Of course, going to fractionalconference.com and signing up, but how do people find you?
Yeah, and you can find me on LinkedIn, Katie Walter on LinkedIn. I am also, my business website is www.trellis.live. And that's my fractional CMO and consulting website. And I'm on Substack as Katie Walter. And you can read all my vulnerability there about being a solopreneur and the work I'm doing to foster self-sovereignty in myself and in our community and culture.
Amazing. Thank you, Katie. It's been an absolute pleasure having you with us. This has been another episode of Dial It In, produced by Andy Witowski and Nicole Fairclough, with apologies to Tony Kornhauser. We will also try to do better next time.